This is the You, Me, and BTC podcast.
Cryptocurrency decrypted.
Welcome to episode 88. One Bitcoin user recently discovered that his ISP, AT&T, was blocking the internet port used by Bitcoin Core. We don't know how widespread the issue is or why AT&T chose to do this, but we're still fairly concerned. So today, we'll share more about this story and discuss what it could mean. Is AT&T targeting Bitcoin? How do we feel about gigantic corporations having so much control and so little competition? How easy is it to get around problems like this? Stay tuned for our thoughts on all that and tons more. Your hosts today are Tim Baker, John Stuart, and myself, Daniel Brown. Here we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the You, Me, and BTC podcast. As always, glad to have you here. For episode 88, I am Daniel Brown, and I'm here with
Tim Baker
and John Stuart.
I actually decided to record with my window open today because my room is basically a hot box. So I don't know if you hear birds tweeting or something. I don't know, just pretend like you're meditating in nature or who knows what.
Be good background noise for the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's
calming.
Yeah, everybody loves nature, so. But actually, I don't know. I don't think it'll be picked up much at all, if at all. So anyway, how's everybody doing? I don't know, we were just talking. It's been kind of a quiet week. I mean, there's never a completely quiet week. There's always stuff going on in the Bitcoin world, but nothing too crazy, right? I mean, has it been quiet?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
I haven't heard anything huge, and the Bitcoin price hasn't dropped by anything over. It hasn't gone above $100 and how much it's dropped, so not too much has happened.
That also, just talking about news reminds me that we have to, I don't know, we got to do some thinking about YMB Live. We don't have to do it now on the air, but I don't know. Honestly, I'm kind of at a loss as for how we should handle it. So everybody listening, keep an eye on that, and we'll try to let you know if we're coming back for that or how we're going to do it. I wish I had an answer for you, but I really just don't know at the moment. So,
and if you want us to bring the live show back, make sure you let Daniel know with lots of tweets and emails.
Well, that's definitely true. Yeah, I mean, it'll be good to know if you want us back, if you think we should do it this day or that day or certain format or whatever. Yeah, let us know, and we will do our best to meet your needs. So
to make your wildest dreams come true.
I really hope your dreams go beyond this, but okay. If we're the end of it, I'm all for doing as much as we can.
Anyway, so we are going to start today with an interesting story. It's not a full story. Honestly, it's actually just a screenshot that was posted on Reddit. And is it an email, I think? Oh, no, it's on the Bitcoin mailing list. So it's out there going around the community. And apparently AT&T is pretty effectively just straight up banning Bitcoin. And it's an interesting thought. I mean, as far as I know, they haven't said anything about, oh, hey, we just don't really like Bitcoin. It seems too sketchy. So just so you know, everybody, we're banning it. If you don't like that, use a different company. No, they haven't said anything like that. And apparently, it's all been a completely hidden thing. And that's one of my biggest concerns. I think the two main things here are that it's hidden and it's effective because, well, I'll explain how. So the way they're doing this, I guess, should I get a name here? It looks like Zach G is the author of this email. Not sure who he is or what he does, but that's who it is.
He's got an email list from the Linux Foundation, from lists.linux.foundation.org, so he's somebody.
I think
I just assume that.
No. I think that's the email list for the Bitcoin group. So if you want to send a message to the whole group, I think you send it to that email. But
Yeah,
I could be
I think-
wrong.
Oh, and then they forward it or something?
Yeah, this is a forwarded email.
Okay.
Because it's Zach G via Bitcoin Dev.
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
So the way they do this is they have a cable box, or at least an internet box. We were having an interesting discussion as we first read this about AT&T. Do they have cable? Do they have boxes? Do they do internet, or do they do TV? Not too sure on all of that, but the point is they have internet and they have boxes that come with the internet. And it's their own boxes. And then that's pretty common. I mean, I have a Verizon Fios DVR at home, and it's their equipment. And they just let us use it for, I don't know, a fee or just because we pay for their service or whatever. Anyway, on the box for AT&T, there is a firewall, a hidden firewall. And the way that this guy found it is, he said for months, he was trying to use Bitcoin, but he just plain couldn't get the port open. And the port number is 8333. And that's, if you don't know, a port is just kind of a number, an identifier for internet traffic, and lots of different applications use lots of different ports. The web is on port 80 for the open web, or it's port 443 for HTTPS, the secure web. That's not essential to the story, but just so you know, that's what the internet does. Certain traffic is designated for certain ports. And Bitcoin, more or less arbitrarily, is run on port 8333. And AT&T is blocking it. And this guy tried for months. He couldn't figure out how. One day he said he got it open for like 30 seconds, and then it just randomly closed again. And so for months, he was just using blockchain. I'm assuming he means blockchain.info. And he really wanted to run his own node. He wanted to run Bitcoin Core, but he couldn't. And eventually, he was calling them. He was asking them questions. He says, after hours of phone calls, they finally told me the truth because I demanded an answer. The internet is being routed through a DVR/cable box. And they confirmed the DVR also has a firewall. To make this even more absurd, they refused to turn off the firewall because it is their equipment. So effectively, they can firewall any port they want, even if the customer asks them not to, in the unlikely event that the customer figures it out. So there's a couple avenues we could take here, but I guess a good place to start would be ignoring Bitcoin for now, just the fact that they can block traffic like this. Anytime they want, they can say, nope, no traffic there. In a certain sense, it hurts. I mean, we like to have openness, we like to have freedom, but AT&T is also a private company, and if they don't support something, they should be able to block it, I guess. Then maybe you'd say they should make it public, though. If they don't support something, and if they're going to block it, they should tell their customers that that's going to happen. I guess I'll just open it up there. So any thoughts on that, guys? Even ignoring Bitcoin, what do you think about them straight up blocking something secretly?
It's kind of a shitty thing to do. I can't really fault AT&T. Well, no, I can fault them. Well, no, I can't. And see right here, this is where I go back and forth, Daniel. I have no problem with like a company blocking you from doing something. Like they can block whatever they want. There's no such thing as free speech in a private setting as long as you're using their equipment and whatever. Like if they want to block you from being able to go onto your blog, that's not an issue to me. Just get a new provider or whatever. But the whole making it secret is kind of worrisome and just comes across as, I don't know, just very strange. Especially because it's like if they were blocking it, or what use do they have to block it without then making a public statement that they're blocking it so that they don't get in trouble? Unless if someone comes and is like, well, you should, if like a government mandate or something else that people might not like comes down, and they'd be able to say, well, we haven't been doing it, but you'd think they'd just come out and say that like other companies have. Or not other companies have, just other companies don't use it. I guess it's different for if you're providing the connection to use Bitcoin.
Yeah, I do. I like that word strange because that's what it is. I mean,
It's just why?
Yeah, like, I understand, like, if you don't like something, then you want to block it. That would make sense. But why do they have to make it secret? Why can't they just say, hey, we don't like this, so we're blocking it? That's weird.
So, I don't know. My question is not even why do they keep it secret, but, like, why... I mean, so we've had stuff like people getting busted from the Silk Road and everything. And as far as I know, like, the ISP is never responsible for that kind of stuff. Am I right? Like, do they get in trouble for things that people have done using their service?
At the moment, I don't think so, but it is kind of an interesting thing because, like, the government's trying to go after FedEx for delivering drug packages or whatever. And so I don't think it would be too far of a stretch for them to go after the ISPs. But at the moment, I don't think they are.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. It's just like... Well, yeah, I was asking Daniel if he knew whether anything else was on 8333, and the only other thing that we found was VMware, which is like a company, right? They run stuff on there.
I don't know too specifically what they do, but I'm looking at their website, and it's not anything sketchy. It's a real big, well-designed website. They've got support sections, training, community. It's not like some obscure hacker website or anything like that. It looks like something that people would use, and I'm guessing for VMware, I'm guessing not everything goes through port 8333.
Yeah.
So maybe most people can still use it, and AT&T doesn't really affect it. Maybe it's just one of their products that uses that port or something. But yeah, it looks legit, is all I'm saying.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's just like it doesn't seem like they have that much of a reason to block.
Right.
Like, I don't see why they would get in trouble for it, and I don't see why they would really, even if they don't like it, why they would care that much. I'm wondering if there are a bunch of other ports that they have blocked that people also don't know about, they just don't use for anything.
Right. I kind of was going to mention that. Like, maybe, and this is definitely a possibility, so it's worth emphasizing. It is possible that they're not blocking Bitcoin. They're just kind of, I don't know, it's just a security thing. Maybe it's just they have a bunch of ports blocked for X, Y, or Z reasons, or maybe it was a mistake.
Yeah.
Maybe it was bad firmware or something. So
I can see them having ports blocked by default and only opening ports that they know people are going to be using a lot.
Right.
Unless they get complaints or something. So, I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's also what I was about to say. They did get a complaint from this guy. He called him up for hours and stuff, and he says they still refused to turn it on. So that changes things a little bit, but again, I mean, maybe that's just policy. Maybe they're just not going to, no, this is our software. We're not going to come out there and change our software just for you. So
well, yeah, it's going to take more than one person.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting to talk about what if they're banning Bitcoin or why would they do it? And it obviously we're going to continue talking about that. But there's also, I don't know, I'd say it's relatively likely that it's not quite what they're doing. But I don't know. Apparently this guy thinks it is. But actually, there's one other thing that I should ask, and that has to do with the idea that maybe companies like AT&T, I mean, we've been saying they're private, so they can block stuff if they want, and that's pretty fair, I think. But also, you have to consider the fact that AT&T, technically private, yes, but they're gigantic, and they get all kinds of help from the government, right? I mean, they can get eminent domain anytime they want, probably. They might have subsidies. I don't know. I just don't know. But they're private, yes, but they also function really heavily with the help of the government. And do you think that affects any of this at all? And this is actually, I mean, I've heard this. I mean, this has been an argument, just the kind of thing that people have talked about for years. But I guess I should also say the reason it's kind of on my mind is I was watching a discussion with Sheldon Richman and Walter Block, and they were talking about left libertarianism, and one of them just pointed out that, hey, I guess the focus there was on sweatshops. A lot of libertarians actually praise sweatshops because yeah, they suck, but they're still helping the people. And one of them pointed out that, well, yeah, but the government put them in the situation, or the government helped out the sweatshop and kind of gave them an unfair advantage. So yes, they're kind of helping the people, but not as much as they would be if the government wasn't there. So, okay, bringing this back to AT&T, the fact that they certainly get help from the government, does it change anything? Should they stop blocking it? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this kind of reminds me of like the whole net neutrality thing too. And we were like surprised to see that a lot of libertarian people were actually in support of net neutrality. But like, I guess the reason why it strikes people as kind of foul is that ISPs are like kind of an oligarchy. It's obviously it's not to the point of monopoly because there's still a few, but I mean if AT&T,
well, real quick, oligarchy is ruled by a few people then, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like an elite few. So like if AT&T does this and then Verizon does this and then Comcast does this, it's like, well, like I don't really have anyone who's going to give me this port. I mean, I guess if that happens, there might be people starting up, and there's also probably ISPs that I don't know about, smaller ones. I don't know a whole lot about the competition in that industry, but
this might be completely unrelated, but I don't know because I'm about to ask you what it is, John. Didn't you tell me one time a few months back, we were just talking about, I guess, anarchy in general, and you were kind of saying how, I think you brought up AT&T and Verizon specifically, and you were just saying how they're such big companies and they're going to have control over things anyway. Something along those lines. Do you remember that, or can you tell me what the point there was? I don't even know if it's related, but any idea?
Yeah, I think I talked to Tim about this too, about how like the idea of a company having basically as much power as a government, at least in one industry, is, yeah, it's basically that. It's basically becomes a government. And I mean, that's what a lot of people will say, that a government, all it is a monopoly on force. So I think at some point, if you're having some sort of existential discussion about what government is, at some point you have to say that, well, you don't have to, but I think it's easy to come to the conclusion that monopolies are just as bad as governments.
Yeah, I guess the difference would be the use of violence, right? I mean, AT&T, even if they were the only cable company, they could block every single port, but I don't know if I would call that force. We had this discussion a few weeks ago, and I don't know, it didn't really end. But I don't know if I would call that force, though. Even if they were the only one, and even if they blocked, all but one port, it's still not force, right? They're not coming to your house and...
It's not force. And there's always, with a monopoly, there's not really a way that they can stop people from starting competing businesses, even if all those businesses just happen to fail. But it's not... I guess I'm not trying to say that like a monopoly is like as much of an ethical issue as governments are. It's more that it's just bad for the consumer. Monopolies are just not good for people.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, that applies pretty directly right here. I mean, AT&T is they're not a complete monopoly, but they have a whole lot of power, and now they're cutting people off. It's not good for people. They're closing ports. I mean, whether they're targeting Bitcoin or not, it's a limitation, and it's not. Well, I was going to say
it doesn't have to be malicious for it to be a problem.
Yeah, I think the issue is like what I would dislike about monopolies is less ideological and more just practical.
Practical,
You have to pay more and worse service.
Are you tired of Bitcoin dice and ready for something different? Try LuckyBit, the original falling coin game at luckybit. It's the most exciting Bitcoin game on the web. You can bet on 5 different payout lines and win up to 999 times your bet. You can even use their faucet to get some free Bitcoin. Dice is boring. Play different at LuckyBit. Check it out at luckybit. I was about to say that having the port open wouldn't hurt anyone. I think that raises the question, though, would it, right? I mean, well, this works whether they were targeting Bitcoin or not. I mean, if they were targeting Bitcoin, do you think that they're helping people because there might be people out there who would be hurt by using Bitcoin? Or even if they weren't targeting Bitcoin, if it was just a general security thing, do you think there are people out there that would have gotten hurt because the port is open and maybe some malware gets in, or maybe people are installing, I don't know, botnets or who knows what? Do you think there's a chance that they're actually helping people by doing this?
It's probably just easier for them, even if it isn't helping. It's just one less thing they have to worry about. I looked at the comments and some person mentioned just that about how the node. I mean, I don't understand it. It's basically what you just said, Daniel, about something getting in if the node isn't closed anyway, because not that many people are going to have it open. But they do this to other nodes, he said. Now, I'm completely going off of Reddit's comments, but it could be a problem.
Yeah, so I just to chime in with that, I don't know whether in actuality this helps people, but I don't doubt that this is
that they
probably
think it does.
That, or just that, like we were saying earlier, they probably have a lot of ports blocked that they just I mean, I guess maybe it hurts a little bit to admit it, but still not that many people are using Bitcoin, and especially not that many people are running nodes. That number is even lower than users.
Actually.
So, well, I know what you're going to say. We can get to that after I finish, I guess. But all I was going to say is that either it's just not really that much of a consideration for them, they didn't really even consider it, or they just said, well, I don't think enough people are going to be doing this. We're just going to block it because it's our standard policy to block things if we don't think they're going to be used much.
Yeah, again, it's policy. It's just hey, it makes things easier. This is how we do it. But yeah, I want to know what you think I was going to say.
I think you were going to bring up the last paragraph in the original email.
I mean, that is my plan. I will eventually. But what I was actually just going to say is the fact that, and actually, you read more of the comments probably, Tim, so let me know if I'm wrong. But I don't know that anybody mentioned the bandwidth that Bitcoin uses, right?
I didn't see that, no.
The blockchain is something like 20 gigabytes right now. So if you're going to be running, I mean, it is a one-time download for the full blockchain, right? It is a one-time download, although it takes a few days. I mean, for most networks, it's going to take a few days because, we've briefly talked about this episodes ago, but you can download a 20 gig file from Google in a few hours maybe, but on a peer-to-peer network, connections are a lot slower and it takes a few days. Okay, fine. Maybe that's what AT&T has in mind. Maybe they're thinking, hey, listen, if people are running all these nodes, that's going to take up a ton of bandwidth. And even once they sync up their blockchain and once they're connected, it's still, I mean, they're sending blocks back and forth. It's not 20 gigabytes, but 1 megabyte blocks now, maybe 20 megabyte blocks in the future, going back and forth all the time. Maybe they're worried about bandwidth. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a legitimate thing. And it's possible that with something like that, it could even be automated, that they have some lines of code running that say, well, if it uses this much bandwidth in this much time, just shut it down for a while or something. I mean, I don't know how ISPs run, to be honest, but I could see that being a thing.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. That's a crazy thought, but it seems absolutely likely. And again, that's policy, all right? It's just the code they have. Hey, if you're using a ton of bandwidth, we might cut you off. Yeah, that's interesting.
I mean, I know in Canada, I think even ISPs actually have data limits on people's home internet service. I mean, we're used to that on cell phones, but I think in Canada, it's all internet service is like that.
Yeah, that's crazy. And maybe that's, it just seems so likely. I don't know. Not really likely, but sensible, right? I mean,
plausible. Yeah.
Yeah. So we did say we're going to get to this last paragraph, so I guess here goes. It's pretty short, so I'll just read it. Perhaps this is the driving force behind the inexplicable and massive decline in Bitcoin nodes. Bitcoin is being censored by the ISPs themselves, and they won't even tell you that. I had to get in touch with the headquarters and threaten to rip it out of the wall to get a proper answer. That is something that I didn't really know about, but it is scary. The inexplicable and massive decline in Bitcoin nodes. That's not really something we want, right? And we could kind of see it if the block size went up. Sure, maybe it'll get harder to be a node, but that hasn't happened yet. And apparently, there's been a massive decline in nodes. Does that worry you guys?
Well, like we were saying, there's not any definitive proof that this is actually malicious or that it's actually targeting Bitcoin. So, I mean, if it's not, it could just be a coincidence. And this could be the cause of the drop in nodes, but it might not have been that's the reason why they did this. And I guess one thing I want to address real quick while I'm still talking, I might as well just get it out of the way. A little bit, I guess there's a little bit of demonizing of AT&T, and we've been trying to stay away from it the whole time. Tell me if I'm wrong, but when I read the last sentence where he's talking about having to threaten to rip it out of the wall to get a proper answer, it sounds like he's like accusing them of trying to keep it secret from him. Like, that it actually is malicious.
I think that's fair. He says right there, they won't even tell you that. So, I think that's fair.
So, I guess I just want to say that I don't agree with that assessment of it, that they probably don't tell people who call them on the phone a lot of things. I mean, think about the kind of people that are calling AT&T every single day. And the people who are answering the phones, first of all, may not know anything. And if they do, they're probably low enough down that they shouldn't be talking about that kind of stuff anyways. And that's probably another policy thing. I'm sure people aren't allowed to talk about a lot of things and not even in ISPs, but in most companies. They're not supposed to just talk about what they do all the time or how the companies run, the inner workings.
Do you think, we've mentioned policy like 5 times here, and I guess what I want to ask is, do you think that policies that result in this kind of situation, do you think that points out at all how, I don't want to say collectivism because there's too many connotations with that word, but I guess I want to get something more general, but I guess I'll just use AT&T. Do you think that's an example of how such a large, or Google, a gigantic corporation, and I guess it's the same thing with that whole discussion about the antiwar.com where they shut down the ads because of policy, right? Do you think that sheds any light on the idea that maybe gigantic corporations are not that helpful because of things like this, right? They have to have policies, but when there's so many people, it's hard to keep track of the policies. It's hard to actually make them beneficial when there are so many people involved. It's hard to tell everybody the policies. It's hard to make them all follow the policies. Does that help any of this discussion or the idea of just big companies or anything like that?
Well, I think I've brought this up maybe about Coinbase a couple times and how we've had some issues with them and some things that we maybe don't like about them, but we've said that that's kind of just part of there being such a big company. It's just not possible for huge companies to be as flexible because too many things slip between the cracks and they're not able to run efficiently if they make allowances to be that flexible. And yeah, it's not ideal, but you also can't have thousands and thousands of tiny ISPs servicing all these people either. I mean, maybe you could, but I feel like that there would be a lot of problems with that too. I think there are drawbacks to big companies, but when you have so many people who want this service, it's kind of just gonna happen.
I don't know if I fully agree with that stuff. I mean, I think the idea of having smaller ISPs it's kind of just like Bitcoin, right? We need decentralization, and it's just a problem that needs to be solved. And I think it can be solved. I think there are people with good ideas out there. I mean, Andreas has talked about sharing internet and stuff a lot, and I think the problem can be solved, but for the time being, I'll accept that it hasn't been solved. So I can give you that a little bit. But then also, I think this comes back to just the idea of the government, right? I mean, you say that you have to have companies this big, or that you will have them when people want a service like this, but I think it's valid to say that they really wouldn't be this big if it weren't for the government. Like I said earlier in the show, just because of eminent domain and all kinds of support like that. I don't think they would be this big if it wasn't for the government. And I don't know, do you think it's fair to point the finger at the government here? I mean, I know John sometimes doesn't like making, stretch connections like that, but I still feel like there's no way they would have gotten this big without the government's help. Do you think that's fair?
Well, first I'll say I'll agree with your thing about, like, it's a problem that potentially could be solved by decentralization. It just hasn't yet. I think that's a good point to make. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, this just brings up the whole question of monopolies again. Not that this is a monopoly, but it's getting closer to it. I guess we can say oligarchy. Do governments help, or do they impede monopolies? Do monopolies easily happen outside of government? Or this is a question that people have debated a lot, I guess, and I don't know if there's a definitive answer to that.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I'm still going to hold by my opinion, but I guess I'll admit that it's an opinion, and there's not too many solid facts on either side. But yeah, I guess I'll just say it one last time. To me, it seems like, yeah, maybe it wouldn't be fully decentralized, but it just seems like without the government, there might be 10 or 12 ISPs as opposed to, what, like 3 or So, I don't know, just a thought.
I think you might be right, but I can't say for sure. So I'm just like, I don't know.
Tim, this is the kind of stuff it was what, I think it really was episode 1. We had a discussion about monopolies because, I don't know, pretty early on. And I was asking just about how if there's anarchy or limited, not any government, how do monopolies get resolved? I mean, we talked about this from the very beginning. So I don't know, anything that you want to weigh in?
I agree with you that, yeah, this is probably because of the government. The reason why AT&T is so big is probably because of the government, but I don't see the use of blaming the government in this, because it's not like, unless they're telling AT&T, like forcing them to block the port or something, it's not like a direct thing of government. It's not in the way that we normally see it. It's more of a consequence of it.
I mean, yeah, they're definitely not. It's not the government that is saying to block this port, but because AT&T has no competition, then they can block the port with virtually zero fear of losing customers, right? They can do anything they want.
Yeah, but that's also because not a lot of people are trying to run Bitcoin Core.
And also just to say real quick, they're not a monopoly, and I guess everybody who's running Comcast or Verizon is still okay, at least as far as we know right now.
Okay. Yeah.
Because if they open that up right now, it's not like they're going to have everyone just, oh, yes, the tyranny is now over, we can now be free. It's going to be some people like, oh, I can run Bitcoin Core, and then some people are just going to keep running blockchain, and then some people are going to have no idea what Bitcoin is besides something that's used to buy drugs and child pornography. So
join the club, join the club, join the Bitcoin Talk Club.
Interested in Bitcoins or altcoins? Love chatting? We are the place for you. Bitcoin Talk Club is a new form sensation coming to a computer near you. Whether you're a professional coin developer or someone that wants to know more, our doors are open for you. We are looking for people to join and help build this forum into a one-stop knowledge base for everyone's needs. We're looking for you at BitcoinTalk.club.
Join the club, join the club, join the Bitcoin Talk Club.
I guess that is a good point, John. Just, they're not a monopoly. I keep acting like they are, but they're not. And people really do say all the time, like, you only need 2, right? You only need 2, and it really is not a monopoly because two is enough for competition.
Not necessarily.
Well, yeah.
Not if they all work together.
Well,
but,
right. But then that becomes one in some
well, that's
senses.
an oligarchy. That's like what we've been talking about. Because,
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they do have some competition, but it's also not like they're not all screwing us at the same time.
Well, I mean, I guess you could right now bring up like 1984. There's 3 countries, but they
Yeah.
all do the same thing, and the fact that they all do the same thing is actually what enables them to coexist and to continue doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in a way, oligarchies can have almost the same function as a monopoly.
Right. And I guess that's just another thing that's kind of up for debate. I mean, yeah, they're definitely screwing us all at the same time, but are they having secret meetings to say, I think we should charge this much? I'll give you this state or this county if you give me this county. Probably not that explicit, but yeah, I mean, they are all screwing us at the same time, so.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know about that. I guess maybe to be fair here, we could say that some people would say that the reason that Verizon or Comcast or AT&T isn't a monopoly is because of the government. And again, that's just a question that's, what I would say, unanswerable right now.
So many unanswerable questions. Well, one point, this has nothing to do with monopolies or governments, but it's been on my mind since we started, and that is that there's ways to get around this, right? There's always a way around regulation. That's always, okay, I get you're not supposed to use superlatives. Is that the right, is it a superlative always? Am I saying that right? I think it is.
Yeah.
So, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. There's always exceptions. Oh, crap, there was another superlative. Anyway, so my point is there's a way around this. And I'm surprised that this guy, he said he tried for months and he couldn't get it. It seems like he has some technical ability. If he was able to open it for a little bit, I mean, he was working with some kind of stuff in there. So it seems like he has some technical ability. So I feel like he would know this. And maybe he does, and maybe my method doesn't work. But it's a pretty simple and a pretty common thing to just route traffic through a VPN or through a different port or through a proxy or through a SSH connection. I do that fairly regularly just because it helps with different things. I mean, it's not that hard to just route traffic a different way, and you could still use port 8333, but you could pretend that it's port 80 or something, right? So that's all I would say is, like, I'm surprised that he didn't catch that. Maybe AT&T is somehow... no, I don't think you can really block that. If they're proxying locally through an open port, I really don't see how they could still block that. But I don't know. I could be
There's
wrong.
another comment on this posting that, in the words of the person posting, they say that the way the person's talking, they don't know if they know the difference between a hole in a firewall and a hole in the ground. So something in this leads them to believe that this person doesn't know what they're talking about. I don't know enough about it, but that also might be the case. This person might just be struggling with it. But no one in the comments refuted him, so he's true. It just might be more confusing than most people are thinking.
Well, he knows what a port is, and he knows what port Bitcoin is run on.
As
So
soon as I
wouldn't say
saw
he
port, I'm
knows
like, oh,
nothing.
he's smarter than I am. I'm not going to question him.
Yeah, so, well, I'll just say there's an interesting possibility that maybe he's some kind of, like, I wouldn't say this is likely, but maybe he's some kind of, like, shill or something. Maybe he's out here, like, he could be working for Verizon and trying to bash AT&T, or maybe he's working for AT&T and trying to... I don't know.
That's an interesting take that I hadn't
They're
thought
putting
about
a
yet.
lot of money into this, into just, like, trying to get the Bitcoin crowd. I mean, that's good. That's a good sign if they're putting enough money to try to get us, but...
I don't think it's that much money. Some upper-level manager just tells one of his guys to make a post. Like,
Yeah, or you could just pay some random internet troll, like, nothing, too, so I guess...
Rogue marketing, yeah. I don't know. I don't know if I would say it's likely, but you have to say the word strange, right? We said it at the beginning. There's a guy who knows all this stuff about firewalls and ports, and he claims that he can open up a closed port for a few seconds. I mean, that would take effort. He claims he knows all that, but he can't just reroute traffic through an open port. You got to say once more that that's kind of strange. So
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't say that it's super likely, but I mean, there's been guerrilla marketing things like this that have happened.
yeah.
So right now, this site seems like it could be shady, but I'm on this site called lurkmore.com, and it's like, see, this has to be super old, because it says if you run Bitcoin QT, you need to open port 8333. We need more Bitcoin nodes. You can help.
So you're saying, like, it used to be that you had to actively open up the port, and then there is a protocol called UP&P, Universal Plug and Play, and you can put that in software so it automatically opens the port. Like, and I'm sure that's how it works now. When you install Bitcoin, it'll automatically open the port. But you're saying in the past they were giving out instructions saying that, hey, we don't have UP&P yet, so if you want to use it, you have to open it yourself.
Maybe. Well, I mean, I know it's old because it's Bitcoin QT and not Bitcoin Core.
Oh, okay.
But, I mean, the copyright on the bottom of the page is 2014. I know I had Bitcoin QT. Like, when we first started getting into Bitcoin, I downloaded it. I maybe only ran it like 2 or 3 times, but I ran it and had no problems. But there's a thing at the bottom, and this is where maybe it gets shady or something. It's like the site has already tested the status of port 8333 on your IP, and it's not open. Please open it.
Yeah, mine says closed too. That's weird. I mean, I know why. I'm sure mine is closed because I'm on like a corporate network.
Yeah,
but it's interesting.
Mine's saying it's closed.
Maybe it's just broken.
So
but anyway,
neither of you guys run Core then?
I don't, and that's actually something
I haven't for a long time.
Yeah, I meant to bring that up with regard to the last paragraph when he's just saying there's a bunch of nodes missing. I really want to start running a node, and actually, maybe I'll get one of those the new Raspberry Pis where you can run it on those nodes. I've been tempted for a long time to get one and just have a node just to support the network, and this kind of encourages me to get on that. And if I can figure it out on my own computer, I want to do that too. So
that's true. I do have an extra Raspberry Pi 2 lying around, so that might be something worth looking into.
Definitely. So one last thing, and this I think will be the closer, unless either of you has anything else. I don't know why I just randomly remembered this, but probably like 20 episodes ago, we had this random idea to at the very end of every show come up with some crazy, maybe it'll be crazy and just funny advice of the day, or maybe it'll be actually helpful advice of the day, and we just completely forgot about it, whatever. But I randomly remembered it now. So I was going to ask you what you think it should be, but I think it's pretty easy. I mean, run a node, right? If you can, run a node. And maybe another thing is look up how to proxy, how to reroute traffic, learn that kind of stuff too. Any other ideas?
I mean, learning about stuff, even if you're not going to be running a node, it's never bad to learn things. So,
yeah.
So that's our advice of the day.
Go out and learn.
What?
I said go out and learn.
Well, yeah. If you want to make it one thing, that would be a good one. But more specifically, if you want to run a node and learn how to handle traffic and internet traffic, it's really not that hard. So look into all that stuff. And also, Tim and John, try and remind me in the future. We'll see if we can keep this going. So. Thanks for listening to episode 88. All of the music in today's show was from John Stuart. Remember to check out this week's show notes at youmeandbtc.com and leave us a comment. We'll see you next Thursday.